Hello and welcome back to my channel, Bookish Lady Night, where we get a look behind the book. Today I am so excited to be joined by the lovely Vee Taylor. She is the author of the series, The University of Isles. There's 2 books out right now, Into the Darkness and Into the Light. And she has some upcoming releases, one that's within the same universe, right?
Yes.
The new one is Between Dusk and Dawn. And then Sugar's Cookies is coming out. I'm excited for that one. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
This is very exciting. So I actually found you. I know you have some other series out on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to binge read her, you totally can right now. And I actually found you. This was my first book experience with you. And I fell in love with books.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have a couple book friends and we all read ARCs, and we signed up for your book and we read it for our book club for that month. And then we actually did a video. It's on my channel where we reviewed that first book and we talked about like what we thought about it and like how we felt about the ending. And we were like, spoiler, 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 don't read it. So it was a lot of fun doing that with them. So it was really special because they're dear friends of mine through this bookish community.
I'm gonna have to go look at it.
I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Within regards to this series, how did you pick your location for your world building? Did you go someplace similar, or did it just kind of come to you?
I'm obsessed with Twilight. I love Twilight, and I've never been to like the Pacific Northwest. Maybe just like as a stopover, but never actually like explored it. And so when I was like thinking about the idea for this book, I was thinking like it had to be like Twilight vibes, but like on a college, like an old school college campus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of how it came to be. Like, I think I even like in Into the Light, I think I make a joke where I was like, it like rains all the time here. Like, it's like, it is the epitome of raining. My dev editor at one point was like, stop with the rain. Like, the rain's gotta stop. It's gotta be sunny at least someday. And I was like,
yeah. Does it? No.
So that's how Isles came to me.
That's awesome. So with the idea of the book, how did that come to you? Did you just kind of see something that sparked it, or?
Okay, so it's kind of a sad story, but I'll share it. And I've shared it a few times before. But okay, so when I was in college, I was one of the few freshmen that could bring their car on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I parked underground, and I parked next to a blacked out Jeep. So hence the Jeep in the books. And I parked next to this guy, and he was like, I was 18 years old, and he was just so good looking. And I was like totally enamored with him. And we would, eventually do the like, hey, how are you? Hey, never I got his name, but that's like about as far as I got. And one day my friend was like, you got to just leave your number on his car and then like run away. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And so I did. And that afternoon, he like flags me down. He's like, hey, hold on. Someone left their like phone number on my car. Did you see who that was? And I was like, not me. No way. I have no idea who that would be. So yeah, so that's about all that, like our relationship sort of kind of how it ended. Never got farther, but we were like friends on like Facebook at the time, and he was super popular. He was like president of his fraternity, or like working to be. And tragically, we were friends on Facebook. And then the start of the year after, I found out that he had passed away. He had, it's a spoiler, but it's okay. I can't talk about it without being spoiler to the books. Yeah. But he had some underlying mental illness that, where he felt like he no longer could be here. And it was really, really sad and it affected me in such a way that like I changed my major to psychology after that. And I was just really interested in the way that like the mind works, and like the fact that we don't talk about these things as often, things meaning mental health issues, and particularly with men, and so looking at someone who's the president of this fraternity, and he was so cool, and, he had a car, and it was like a fancy car. There's so many layers to humans. And so when I was moving across the country, it was like a really hard time for me. I was like leaving friends and familiarity. And so I kept thinking about just this this guy and the concept of mental health. And so, yeah, that's how it came. That's how Ash's character came to be. And then the story just kind of unfolded from there. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's sad, but also it really changed your path in life too.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's a really needed field. Like you said, it's not talked about enough. It's not dealt with enough. I suffer from depression and PTSD and trauma, so I had a really hard time myself like opening up to the person to talk to because of that stigma that's around it. And then like my husband, he's military and he's gone through a lot of stuff, and after, you know, he's 20 years about to retire, I finally was like, look, you need to go see somebody. So like it is a big thing, and it is something that definitely people need to talk about, because there should not be a reason for that ever.
Right.
Like
Right.
it should be talked about and dealt with. And that was one of the things I really liked about the book. And at first I didn't, you know, you don't know what's going on within the first book. You kind of, you don't really see it. He masks it so well that you don't see what's going on. And then by the end, it's kind of blindsided you. And then you go into the next book and seeing like how everything's pieced together. And then you see like flashbacks of things and you're like, oh, and it's very telling for sure.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I know that people were upset with me about, is the fact that it feels so jarring at the end of book one. But it was written intentionally, right? Because I do think from Ash's point of view in particular, I don't even think that he knew how to describe what had been happening in his life. And the only way I felt I could retell that was through Rain's point of view, right? Through them growing up together.
Yeah, for sure. So how was that with getting through the story, writing it, and having those triggers and having that trauma? And then like, was it hard for you to delicately write about it, or did it come easy given your background?
Super easy. Into the Light particularly, I think I wrote in like 15 days, which is like crazy. Like that story just came out of me. These two books literally poured out of me. Like it's so interesting now compared to other books that I've written, how fast this whole thing came out. It felt like a story that I was meant to tell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Like it was meant to be put out in the world.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So when you were working on these books, are you like a plotter or pantser? It just kind of came out. Did you do an outline or?
No, I am the biggest pantser in the world, which is, it's a con, because my first drafts, the person will be wearing 8 different color shirts before like it comes off or something, right? Or they're in sweaters and t-shirts, you know, it's just, I just write from like a feeling. But if I do get stuck, I will like sit down and then like plot what I'm stuck with. So just like an overview, right? Because I experienced that recently with a book I'm writing currently, and I just felt like I couldn't move the story. And someone had recommended just like putting little plot points so that I could like tadpole, like jump to them. And then I knew how to fill in the gaps from that point. But I would say I'm pretty much a pantser.
Yeah. So one thing I really loved about the story was the names.
Thank you.
And like we did a whole like in my little book group about the names, because we were like, they were so telling to the story. Like, you know, she burns him up, her name's Ember, and he's the ashes, and then Rain like douses all of the everything. Was that
super intentional?
Right with that?
Super intentional. And so listen, I thought I was actually, when I was speaking to, like, I had a marketing coach, when I was speaking to them about this story, when I started writing Into the Darkness, she initially was like, well, it's Romeo and Juliet retelling. And I was like, yes, it's dueling families. It's kind of like inspired by. And she's like, well, you have to market it as that. And I was like, no, because then people will know. And she's like, no, they won't get it. And I was like, no, they're going to get it. They're going to get it. And she's like, just do it. Trust me. And I was like, okay, I'll trust you. I thought everyone was going to know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then I had the names. So I knew Rain's name was Rain. I don't know why, but I imagine always him as Rain, and Ash was always Ash, because they're kind of like brothers. And then I was like, I had to like connect them. but I was like, people are going to know, like they're going to put the connection together. They're going to get it. And not everyone got it. And I was like, oh my God, that's pretty impressive.
No, I get.
Good for me.
Yeah, that okay. So that originally was why I was pulled to the book because I love Shakespeare. I started reading Shakespeare when I was 7, so I was like, oh my god, Romeo and Juliet. I love that. That was one of my favorite plays. And then I was like trying, like I saw the similarities, like you said, of the rival families and all that. But I was like, where is this? Like, when is it going to happen? What is going to happen? And I didn't get it. I didn't even get it. I was like, no. Because, like, I didn't put that together. I literally just saw the dueling families and, like, that aspect of it that was not even on my radar until it happened. And I was like, what? So, and I think I finished the book at, like, I was like 2:00 in the morning when I finished the book. And I was like, oh my God. I was just crying. I was like, that's not okay. And so I immediately like hopped on to see when the next one was coming out, and I was like, it's gonna be a while. So yeah, it was a very, very good book and very out of nowhere. You really didn't know it was coming, for sure. So with writing, because you've been doing this for a while, how do you celebrate like your milestones?
So actually, I've only been a writer for a year and some change. I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so it feels like this has all come very fast, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But so on release day, my husband and my kids know not to leave me alone. I'm on my phone the entire day. Like if you needed me that day, easy to get a hold of me. I just like, love the hype. I like love the feeling that this community has kind of brought. So I will say like I started to like dabble in writing in 2013, and the community was so different back then, and it just felt kind of disjointed, at least for me. Like I didn't feel like I had like people to talk to, you know what I mean? And so it's just it feels like such a nice place to like have people like rally for you and cheer you on and stuff. So I like to think that you all, in terms of like the bookish community, celebrate with me on release day, and that's how I like to celebrate, especially release days for me. It's very special.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So when you are working with us out do you read reviews or do you avoid them?
Okay, listen. I will read them. When the arcs are out. Just because I do think that there are some reviews, even though they may be 1 or 2 stars, that are actually beneficial for me to read in terms of I need to hire a better editor, or I need to look at these plot points don't exist, right? I need to come up. There are beneficial ways, the reviews that are like, this sucks, like that obviously isn't going to help me. But probably around a day or 2 after release day, I just stop reading them because I find them, I don't want to read the mean ones, but I will have my assistant occasionally look particularly for those reviews that are constructive criticism.
Yeah. So you said you started to kind of dabble in it a couple years ago and got out of it. What made you start back up again? Like, was it an event?
Yeah. So I had a baby, and I also suffer from depression. And when I had the baby, it was like double depression. I was not feeling like myself. And I was in the photography field for a long time. So I was feeling kind of creatively burnt out from that. But my brain is creative, I think. And so I needed to still do something creative. And so my therapist suggested, like, why don't you try writing again? And I did, and I didn't stop. Like there is not a day, maybe like 2 days of the whole year, and where I'm like sick as a dog and I don't actually put words on a book, because even though it just makes me feel good, like everyone's like, why do you write so much? It's like it brings me like some joy, even if it's maybe like 3 sentences. Right? It just brings me that creative joy that I miss.
That's great. So when you are writing, how do you set up your day? Do you like have a goal of like a certain scene or chapter or word count that you aim for, or just kind of go with the flow?
I typically like to write about 1,000 words a day. That's like what I like to stick to. If I'm at a really good part of the book, that goes higher, but I think I probably average about 1,000 a day. So even on the days where I write maybe 100 words, it kind of averages out, depending. But on average, that means I can finish a book in about 2-ish months, meaning
Yeah.
like first draft.
First draft,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's really, really cool. So, I'm gonna scroll down on my notes here. So, does writing energize you? Obviously, it doesn't make you tired usually because it's your daily therapy.
Sometimes, like when you're reading, especially for me, if I'm reading paperbacks, I don't know why, but I tend to read on my Kindle. But if I'm reading a paperback, the words kind of like start to go
Yeah,
like, yeah, yeah. That's exactly how sometimes writing gets. The words go like, and I'm like, okay, we are not making sense. We are done for the night. Like we are
yeah. You're like,
closing
I'm
up
signing
shop.
off.
But I have young children still, and so my writing schedule is kind of interesting because I start my day at like about now, so about 7 at night, and I end my night at about 2, 3 in the morning, and then I wake up at like 10 in the morning because my husband takes the morning shift, so to speak.
Yeah,
So yeah, I find that I'm just this like weird night owl that like writes in the dark. I live in the dark.
it's telling in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have that bit in there. That's really cool. That's awesome that you have that schedule and you can make it work and maneuver it with little ones. I know that all too well. Mine are little also. Have you ever had writer's block?
Yeah, I'm currently in it right now. And so the advice that I've been given is to push through it and like keep going, right? Even if it's a few sentences a day, don't stop because once you stop, like you lose that like it's like working out. You lose that like motivation to keep going. So yeah, I don't know. We're just gonna keep writing. If I do have writer's block though, I've found in the past like music works really, really well. Or like really good TV shows or like angsty like books. They usually help me like yeah. So if you ever see me being like, I need a sad book, it's probably because I'm in writer's block moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like that would be hard, especially if like what you're more like an indie route, right? You're still
Yeah.
doing indie route, so you have a little bit more say. But I would think like if somebody was like telling me you have to have this book by this date, I would be like, it's not happening. Like I would be scared.
I will say my writing though I have a unique process because so when I first dabbled in the world in 2013, the reason I stopped was because of the reviews. Like I could not stand bad reviews, and so I ended up well, I couldn't take the criticism, right? And so for me, the only way that I'm able to do it is if I write a book a year prior to actually ever releasing it. So like Into the Darkness and Into the Light, I wrote knowing that if I didn't write it, I would have written Into the Light in a very different way, and it wouldn't have been authentic to the story, I think. And so like currently, like the book I'm writing, I won't publish until next year because I can't. If someone was like, you have 3 days to turn this, I'd be like, nope, that's it, I'll shut down. Like my brain goes like, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's a hard no. So, so do you have like a writing kryptonite that you can recall?
Ooh, like wait, kryptonite like a bad thing?
Like you know how like Superman, like his powers are like totally demolished with kryptonite. So it's like something that like derails your writing. Like you're just like, okay, I'm done. Like we're not doing this anymore.
Let's see. Yeah, so sometimes I know people think that writers are crazy and authors are crazy when they say this, but like genuinely when you're writing, characters speak to you. And for me, when a character doesn't listen, I'm done. We're over. I hate you. I'm through with
Yeah.
you. And so I think that would definitely be my kryptonite is when the characters, when they don't fit together like you want them to fit, if that makes sense. Like a spicy
Yeah.
scene just isn't working, or like their like personality just is kind of dry. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on, be better, right?
Yeah. They're trying to lead you this way and you're like, no, we're going over here. So yeah. Did you have moments like that into these stories, in either of these stories?
Yeah, so I know everyone probably wants it. And I thought about even doing like a newsletter scene, but like chapter 31 and Into the Darkness, the initiation scene. I needed Rain to get in there. I needed him to. And to this day, I have tried to sit down and be like, bonus scene, right? Listen, that man will not go anywhere near that. He is like,
Yeah.
then and I was like, no, he would never do that. He would be sitting in the corner, glowering at everybody, being like, don't
Yeah.
touch her. Like, oh, just like,
Yes.
like he can't be in there. And I was so mad because there are so many good moments that could have happened, I think, if he was in there. But
yes,
alas.
I get your side of it, but I totally love that he didn't, because he was like, no, I don't share. Like, I loved that about him. And like when in the second book where she's asking about that, he's like, no, absolutely not.
For him, it was so solidly like, I don't know what you're talking. That's a no.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved him. I loved his personality. And like in the first book, he's so mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't know, especially in that scene, in that chapter, because he walks by and you're like, what the heck is his deal? Like, what is going on? Like all that stuff that happened at the beginning when she came to the party and that whole moment, like you think like he'd be like all for it. And then he just walks by and you're like, and then you get all of, the background in the second book. And oh, that hairdresser. I did not like her.
Me either. And I will say that was a scene inspired by my husband, because I was like, so I talked to him about my stories. Like, people are like, does he read them? And I was like, no, but he knows everything that happens. And so we were talking, and so my hairdresser was on maternity leave at that time, and I was in tears. I was like, my hair is ugly. I need you to fix my hair. And so he was doing my hair, and he's like, wouldn't it be like nice if they were like, in one of your books? And I was like, yeah. I was like, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Oh, that's cool that he's there as your sounding board and you can bounce things off and do that. So if you were to go back in time, I mean, I know it's not been too long, but you have probably learned a lot in the year that you've been.
Yes.
What would you tell your younger writing self? Is there anything that you tell yourself?
Yes. So don't hire people just because of who is on their like testimonials. You should hire your people because you want to work with them and they want to work with you. My younger self did not know that. I lost a lot of money in terms of like an editing and cover design, just like a lot of things that just kind of went wrong and like I didn't realize. And now I've realized like I want to work with people who want to work with me, but also like who want to like lift me up too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because they're holding something that's kind of a part of your soul, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like you put a piece of your soul in everything that you write.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, so I make book cards I make box cards, so like greeting cards based off of books. And for me, that I pour that into everything into it because it's going to go for someone and it's like a piece of my heart I'm giving to them to brighten their day.
Yeah.
So I would be so like crazy if I had someone around me that was like negative or like didn't have my back in that. Like, especially with books, because, they could say something to you about a certain scene for whatever their little reason is, and you might take that to heart and then totally change that scene that maybe shouldn't have been changed.
Right. Yeah.
So I could totally see that being a big deal. So for you, what is the most difficult thing about writing?
It's not actually the writing part. I think for me, the most difficult part is like creating a business, I'm a creative person. I'm not business minded. So creating business minded like organizations to help my business grow, if that makes sense. Because I want to be creative and I want to put these stories out, but I also want to profit and eventually make money off of doing that as well.
Because you're like a small business.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to have all the hats on because you're doing it yourself. So yeah, that definitely, if you're creative side and then you're trying to go that route, probably be nerve-wracking. Yeah. So do you enjoy doing like promoting? Not at all.
Promoting, yeah. So like I've recently discovered my love of TikTok.
Okay.
I love getting on it. I am like, get me on a TikTok all day long, right? I don't know why. I don't have a lot of friends in real life, so I think that it kind of like, it's like talking to my phone feels like I'm like venting, like it's just like talking to a friend, right?
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that, and I've like discovered this, like I like to be creative in that sense, but I don't love like someone so in term I'm releasing this book and they're like, you need to have these book boxes and create these forms, and I was like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, I don't know how to
Yeah.
create a form. Like, someone else create it for me.
Yeah.
Or just like finding hooks on my books. I think my whole book is amazing. Like, what do you mean I have to pick a few lines? I don't know, I wrote them
Yeah.
all. And so having that to me is just what I find a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely is. So what's your most favorite part within writing? Like writing a certain scene or a certain banter? Is there anything that you really pinpoint you enjoy the most?
Love writing a spicy scene. There are times where I write the spicy scene in the chapter first and then I'll fill in the rest of the chapter. I don't know. I think that it, like, when done right, I think that it can move a scene forward in such an intimate way. And like, they're just fun to write. Like, they require like fun research, and I always like to keep myself on my like toes. Like, I don't want to write the same scene like with different words over and over again. So I'm like, what else we got? I'm like, let's find something else that we can do. So I find those like really fun. But then I also find like moments of like, I don't like writing banter. I don't think I'm good at it. But I find moments of inner monologue really, really fun to write as well. Unpacking it in your mind, you know, like, because we do it naturally in our brains where we're like, I shouldn't touch that. I'm going to touch that. No, don't touch that. You're going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, and so I really like layering those pieces together in inner monologue.
Yeah. So going back, since we did kind of touch on it in that first book, in that chapter, did you struggle with that, or was that you just always knew you were going to have that like initiation?
I always knew I was going to have it. That scene was written before the entire book was. That was the first scene that got written, and then eventually I like moved it and put it in there. I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun for the person that I was creating too. Like, for Ember, I knew that she was going to be so naive and immature, and like, quite frankly, I know she's annoying in book one, like intentionally, right? Because I do think that there's like shelter, like she lived such a sheltered life, you know? And so to experience that, I think was so what she needed too. And I think she only needed to experience it once, right? Like, I don't think she needed to experience it multiple times. But there was a point in my editing where I was in developmental edits, and my editor was like, I think we need to start writing drawings because bodies are starting to look like you know, like not normal at this point. And she's like, nothing is working. So please get on a piece of paper and draw what you're saying, and then let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like that. Like, I know in the second book, golly, his name is eluding me right now. No, not Rain. No, his second in command.
Pico.
So he's in that scene in the first one, and then having like the not awkward dynamics after. Like, I liked that it wasn't weird, and the girlfriend was there. Like, I liked that it wasn't like weird in the next book, because I would be like, in my own mind, I'd be like, is that awkward? Like, is that awkward? Is it, gonna be weird? But I liked how you did that, where it wasn't. It was just
and it's so, because I think I'm like, I would be such an awkward, I could never be friend, like, I was like, in my real life, could never be me. But I do like that. And as I was writing, I knew I needed to give. So one of my pet peeves in reading is if a book has too many friends, because I don't have many friends in my life. It's hard for me to understand a friend group dynamic. So I knew I needed to give Ember a friend, because I think we all need a friend. But having Maddie's story, I already had planned out, so she couldn't be a friend, and also she became a villain very quickly. She needed somebody, right? And so I think Marissa was probably the best person, because because they experienced that together too.
Yeah.
That they had some knowledge of something that nobody else kind of knows.
And I love Santiago. He was,
yeah,
all the stuff she went through in that second book, and I'm not going to say it because I'll start crying, but it was just like, been there. And so I was like, you did that very well.
Thank you.
All the stuff she went through was like, my golly, and you handled it very well, for sure.
Yeah.
So you were inspired kind of like by Twilight. So is she like your inspiration for writing, or was there any other factors that played into you wanting to write?
So I'm very inspired. So I think people are surprised to find out that I actually don't read a ton of dark romance. I read a lot of romantasy, and I'm very inspired by romantasy as a genre, and particularly the nuances in the language that's written. I'm thinking, like, just to name some of the big ones, but like JLA, Jennifer Armentrout, the way you see a lot in romantasy, or like Carissa Broadbent. I love the way that they write these almost poetic sounding books. And for me, I was like, I want to incorporate something like that, or like that all like consuming kind of like I will like die for you kind of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
I needed to incorporate that, but like I don't want to write fantasy. So I was like,
Yeah.
so how are we going to do that? And so hence Isles came to be, because I was like, I'll create a world that doesn't really exist, right? I mean, it's a place that we can all make up, or we can have
Yeah.
like, we can imagine, but also creating these like almost poetic ways in which it's like this world is, right? And so there's a lot of what I like to call like purple prose, or like flowery language, a lot of alliterations and similes that I like to use in Isles. And so yeah, I'm very inspired by the romantasy genre.
Yeah, and I could totally see that now that you're saying it. Like I already thought that like when I was reading it, and I like those kind of books. Like
Yeah.
I love both of those authors. I love that genre, and I think that that's part of why, and just going back to the whole Shakespeare thing, I think even if you didn't mean to, you brought that into
Yeah.
it because of the poetic nature of how you wrote the stories.
Yes.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Who is your favorite character out of that group?
Rain. Rain was always my favorite character. He is like the nicest person in my life, in my book life. He's like so kind and gentle. And think of even in Into the Darkness. I know we're doing spoilers. So sorry, this is a spoiler. In Into the Darkness, when he brings her the phone, when she like lost her phone, it was like a moment of like if you think about it, like something tragic happened to her, right? Like traumatic, not traumatic, with the guy in the club or whatever, right? And Ash is dealing with club business, so to speak, or like the den, right? And Rain comes and is like, you probably need your like a phone back to call him, right? And it just was like a notion to the fact that Ash was always going to put the den first and his dad first, because he didn't know any other way to put her first, right?
Yeah.
And Rain was always going to put her first, right? And so from that moment, I knew that like there's no way that the story could change.
Yeah,
Opinion.
for sure. Yeah, I can see that. So, which of the characters, if any, are like you? Do you feel like any of them are like a lot like you?
I think I write a lot of myself in Ash, which is why Ash was also probably one of the harder characters to write. Just the feeling of like knowing what it's like to like suffer silently, because I think a lot of people with mental illness in particular, we do suffer in silence. Like our disease, so to speak, isn't like something that other people see, right? Necessarily. Yeah. And so I think that I write a lot of that piece of that into Ash, which also, as I was writing Ash, I was like angry at him, because I was like, you could go to therapy, because I was like, I'm in therapy, you can go to therapy. I was like, at one point, I've been in therapy forever, but I've had this therapist for many years. And at one point, I remember telling her, there was like a piece I wrote, and I was like, I'm so mad at him. She's like, we're talking about a fictional character. I was like, yeah, but it's kind of like me. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's
like, okay. Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, so I think that I hated writing him. Not that I hated it. It was difficult to write him.
Yeah.
But also I do feel like there are many pieces of Ash that are similar to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really, it's cathartic probably,
yeah.
I would think, to like let it out.
Totally.
So what are some of your favorite tropes as a writer that you, or maybe some that you haven't had a chance to write yet that you want to?
So I'm currently writing a trope that I've been dying to write, a secret baby. I love a secret baby.
Me too.
I love a secret baby. And I know I haven't had a book to write it. And like this one, it like fit. And I was like,
I'm so excited.
but yeah, I love secret baby. I like single mom a lot. You'll see I have a few single parent books. And then a trope I haven't written, maybe like a grumpy grumpy. I don't think I've ever written a grumpy grumpy. Like where they're both kind of grumpy. You're just like, yeah, I think that would be fun to write, but I've never written it. So that would be cool. Yeah.
That would be cool. I love grumps. They're like toasty marshmallows because usually they're like super sweet on the inside, but you just don't know it because they're so salty. So I love that. So when you're writing, do you know you're gonna put like, did you know exactly where that cliffhanger was gonna happen or that plot twist that you put in there? Do you see them, or they just kind of like lead you up to that spot when with your characters and when you're writing?
No, I knew it for this book. I knew how it would end, so I had to go backwards. So like the way these things come to me is like I see them visually almost like I'm watching a movie, and they'll happen to me at like random times of the day. Like I'll never forget I was on a flight, and I like imagined what would happen to like, oh, I have flight paranoia, so I was like, what if the like door opens, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my god, but wait, hold on, in this book that I'm thinking about, what if he, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so it's just very random things, my intrusive thoughts that become like parts of my book. And so, yeah, so I can see it and then I can sit down and actually start writing it. So if I have ideas in my head, sometimes I have ideas, but sometimes they're like fully formed movies that I just have to get out in my writing.
Yeah. Do you do like a brain dump to like get all of the ideas out?
No, I have to go because if I brain dump, then the story will be like 90 pages. Like it wouldn't be so like I have to like slow myself down and literally watch like it's like a
the old movies, the real
like the whole, yeah, it's like
yeah.
And then they're and then I have to describe what I'm seeing in my head. Yeah.
And you definitely with this book with the vivid descriptions you use and like the imagery, even though it's not a real place, like I totally can see it in my mind.
Yeah.
And it definitely comes out, especially with the narrators. Like you picked phenomenal narrators, by the way.
Yeah.
They were great.
Thank you.
Hearing them, it's like watching a movie.
Yeah.
So that for sure. I love when a book does that. That's like my absolute favorite. So with designing the covers or working with someone to design the covers, did you like that process?
Yes. I used the same lady who helped me design my first series for these two. And I told her exactly what I was very particular, and I had like example photos of what I wanted, and she nailed it. Like there's like, and I knew this was like a stock photo that I had found, and I was like something like this. So she just used this photo, and I was like, I don't actually know how to describe what I want for Into the Light, but like the fact that these go so well together. Yeah, I love these. And then I did hire a separate designer to do the, I have a special edition, like signing edition, hardcover. And those, I told her I wanted similar, but I wanted them like, there's like lightning on them and like rain. And then the Into the Light has like a bright spot on it. So I wanted them like different, but in the same kind of world. And then B-Dad, so Between Dusk and Dawn, will fit into the series. Similarly, although that book takes place more in Danceport, so like the town, it starts off in Isles, but like it'll fit into the theme of this. And the only thing that it just won't, because it's not technically part of the duet, if that makes sense. But I wanted them all to be in the same world,
cohesive and stuff. Yeah. I definitely want the hardback. I'm gonna get those because one, I love signed books. Like
yes.
I love signed books, but I love hardbacks usually because
me too.
They're always different artwork.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm obsessed with that. So going into that, and I don't know if you can tell us anything. So is it any of the characters in the next book we know, or is it all new people?
Yeah, so I can share what I've announced. But so it's Walsh's book.
Okay.
And at the end of Into the Light, I included the blurb for B-Dad. So it's Walsh's book and it's Maddie's book, which I know people are like, I'm not reading that. you don't have to read it to feel like the duet is completed, right? Will
Mhm.
you get sneak peeks of Ember and Rain? Yes, you absolutely will because it's her brother, right? But this book is very different because I wanted to give people who wanted like a more mafia kind of like styled book with like action and stuff. I wanted to give that, right? Like, and I just also feel like Maddie is very underrated. So Maddie was a funny story. My best friend's name is Madison, but I call her Maddie. And I was so happy one day. I started writing the book. I was like, she needs a friend. She needs a roommate. Oh my God, Maddie said, I'm going to use your name. And she's like, yay. And then as I'm writing, I realize this character, Maddie, is like mean. And I like text Madison. I'm like, sorry. And she's like, you
Yeah.
bet. Like, I remember her texting me and she's like, it's okay. You just have to redeem me later. And I was like, I got you, girl. I'll write you a whole book. I was like, let me
Yeah.
write you a whole book. And so I actually think Maddie's character is so uniquely complex. And Walsh ends up being like very different than what we've seen in the Isles duet. So it's my darkest book for sure. And it's very like, there's like a lot of action points that happen. So I'm excited for it.
Well, I'm excited that she'll grow, I think. I'm
She will.
assuming she'll grow in this book and like change her stripes maybe.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, yes, she will. No, no, no. You will like her by the end of it. Walsh,
Yeah.
that's a toss up to be honest.
Toss up. All right. Well, I'm prepared. I'll mentally prepare myself for when I read that. So this is just like a fun question I always ask. What is your like favorite drink and snack when you're writing?
Yeah, so I'm a Diet Coke fiend. So I like Diet Coke, or I'm like a sparkling water kind of girly. So if you have new sparkling water flavors, I probably have drinking them. And in terms of snacks, so I crave salty snacks. So I have been known to DoorDash French fries at like midnight because I love a good salty snack.
Yes. So in your opinion, what do you think makes a great story?
I think a really good story is a story that feels immersive. That's not a word. It feels like as
Immersive?
a reader, yeah, immersive, yeah. That you can just like be in, if that makes sense. Like you just feel for the characters, or you feel like the world, or like I just read a story recently where I don't even remember what time it was. You know what I mean? Like where you are
Yeah.
so not in real life, right? I think that's what makes a really good story.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So on this writing journey, what is the most surprising thing you've learned?
I think I've learned a lot about myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a series prior to this. So it's called The Marchetti Men, and it's a mafia series. And it was my first series. And as you read it, you'll kind of see my voice changing. Like the fourth book, I think would be very similar to What is Isles. I have learned through writing all of that, right, and through practice and through creating voices and characters. So my background is in mental health too. I'm by trade like a mental health counselor. And so I struggled for a long time leaving that career and coming to this career. And I think recently I realized I can marry the two. And so that's how Isles came to be. And moving forward, you'll see that so I'm writing a hockey series. And so moving forward, although not dark romance, you'll still see that marriage of mental health and romance, and trying to find these characters that are flawed, still worthy of love,
Yeah.
still like journeys of finding themselves as well as finding a partner who loves them for who they are too. And so for me, that's the biggest thing that I learned, is that it takes maybe some times, because it did take me a few stories to finally learn and like develop like a voice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's phenomenal that you're using that background
Thank you.
and that you're putting it into stories because, like, for me, so I have a lot of PTSD from a traumatic event that happened to me. And even though, like, people say, like, read the trigger warnings, a lot of the books, I'll still read them because, one, it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And two, sometimes I'll get a different perspective either about myself or about the person that did the things they did to me.
Yeah.
That I'm and it triggers something in me that I can like peel away one more layer or let go of one more thing or, reframe it. Because a lot of the time when you are depressed, I don't know for you, but for me, like I internalize everything and I'm like, it's my fault that this is happening. It's my fault that this person is this way. When in that situation, it wasn't my fault. It was that person's fault. So it made, because I was constantly my negative intrusive thoughts telling me it was all me when it really wasn't. So I love that about books, because then if you see someone else going through that, you kind of shift your paradigm and you can like grow, like you were just saying, like you grew through your writing. The reader can do that too.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love when books are deep like that, because not only is it entertaining, but it's also like healing for sure.
Yeah.
So
and I think that like when I can find a book that I relate to too, you know what I mean? Because there are a lot of times where I can't relate to the characters, so it's hard to become like immersed into the book. But like view like crying as like cathartic, and so like I think sometimes it's good to have like books that make us feel sad. You know what I mean? Like maybe we did experience something similar, right? But like you said, like it makes you see it in a different way, or makes you relive that, or remember it in a different light that helps you eventually, go back down the path of healing, or go to the path of healing. But yeah, that's why I like books that you just can relate to. And that's why I started to do it, because I felt like I was reading these books where I feel like, do no one have problems? I was like, none of you have problems. Like, I was like, I mean, great for you all, but like, I can't relate to that.
Yeah. Exactly. And I actually, when I did the review for the second book, because I had just started changing up my page and like trying different things, I ended up featuring it for like my Meltdown Monday. Because like,
Me too. Me too.
So my friend actually recommended that. She's like, why don't you do like a therapy session, like Meltdown Mondays? So I started doing it. And that book was so perfect for that, because I cried through that entire book. I was crying like mascara all down my face. I loved it. So definitely it gets you in the feels for sure. And in the best way. It definitely is great.
I was in the letters. So the letters in Into the Light.
Yes.
That didn't come out of me, like, because I cannot read that without I was reading it to my friend and I was in tears, and she's like, you wrote this, and I was like, I didn't. She's like, you literally did, and I was like, I don't know where this came from. This is sad.
Oh my gosh, that part in the book, like, I don't want to give anything away, but seriously, that part in the book,
I literally cannot read them. Like, to this day, if someone is like, read it, and I was like, you understand, like, when I was doing the audiobook, so I got it like prior, so I was doing like a proofing read. They were like, I knew what was happening, right? And I was like, skip. My friend was like, why are you skipping? And I was like, I can't listen to this, I'll cry.
I can't listen to this again. I can't live through this again. Go. That's funny. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you kick us in the gut with that in the best way, though. I was so glad, because I was like, please let there be something, like some sort of closure or something. And it was just so perfect how you did it. And I love the way you set it up for like each of them, and then what they say. And then that whole thing was like, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Like I love that, because they both had like mad guilt.
Yes.
Like bad guilt. Yeah. And so I loved how you did that for sure. So did you have any other stories? I always like to ask, because you're writers. Did you have other books when you were like a child that you really loved besides the Twilight that has always like stuck with you?
Yeah. So I've always been a big reader, but the books that I've like kept from like my teenage years was the Gossip Girl series. Read them cover to cover, and to this day, give me a billionaire romance and I'll eat it up. But I loved Gossip Girl because I loved the dynamic of Chuck and Blair, and that is a dynamic I hope to write sometimes, is that just like push and pull, and that like you're supposed to be together, right? Yeah, I love that. And then my daughter's name actually is Beatrix, after Beatrix Potter. So I loved The Tale of Peter Rabbit is my favorite book. Yeah.
I love Gossip Girl. I was totally in that. And Twilight. Twilight.
I mean, I can't even tell you what I was, like 16, 17 when Twilight came out. I had like the t-shirts I had with the faces on that. Like I was so into it.
Exactly. So with writing, have you changed a lot since you published your first book to now when you publish books? Have you
Yes,
done
I hate
anything
my first book.
major?
You're gonna have to. No, I do not listen. My assistant who comes with me to my events is gonna be like, "Why did you say that?" No, it's not that I hate it. It's just that it's my first book, right?
Mhm.
And I have changed so much since that book. I love the story still, but like I said, like marrying this mental health thing has been really nice for me. And also, I just feel like the more you do something, the better you get at it. So I'm currently writing my 14th book, and although I have 6 out, I just feel like I've already written 14, right? Like I'm just getting better, right? And so when I look at my older work, it's hard for me to be like, I don't know, it just feels very different to where I am at today, right? Not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just kind of different to where I am.
It's a total different journey you're on
Yes,
now.
yeah.
Do you do anything to like improve your writing now? Do you do like seminars or just continually write?
I just continually write, but I also am really into recently. I'm really into purchasing like books like to help you with writing. So like I'm looking at it right now. Sorry. It's called Body Beats and something romance authors. But like it helps you so I was getting really frustrated with like the he said, she said or thrusted was a good one or moaned. It's just they come on, there's only so many times you can he said, she said, thrust, right? And so this book helps you pick up different ways and like helps your brain kind of like Scrabble how you would say different words, right? Because there's only so many words to say he said, but there
Yes.
are many different ways to say it. And so yeah, so I recently got into this book and I'm become kind of weirdly obsessed with like highlighting it. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, I like that.
Yeah, you're like, these are the list of words I want to use on the side right here. So, given that you have romance, I always like to ask, what is your love language? Do you know it?
Yeah, so my giving love language is
Yeah.
gift giving. So I like to gift others, like gift giving. And then how I like to receive love is probably through personal or quality time.
Quality time. And do you feel like you've written that into your characters
No,
at all?
no. I think my characters do a lot of my husband's love language, which is interesting. His love language is acts of service. And so I find
Mhm.
that I write a lot of acts of service because that's how I see my husband give me love, right? And so it's easy for me to write that out, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally does. Yeah, that's great. So, do you have anything unique or quirky about yourself that people maybe don't know?
Ooh, I don't know.
Or a hobby?
No, I don't have any hobbies. Reading. No, I will say for a very long time, I used to paint furniture. So I would like
Mhm.
purchase like old furniture and then like refurbish it for a hot minute. But I'm the kind of this is quirky, so I'm the kind of person that will find a hobby for like 30 seconds, go like 100% at it, and then like we're done. So Hobby Lobby, when they see me coming, they're like, "Who is she? What hobby is she coming for today?"
That place. I can't go in there.
No,
I like
No, I was telling my book club last month. I have like an in-person book club. One of the girls was saying that she makes cakes and I was like, "Oh, listen, I walked into Hobby Lobby, went to the cake section and thought, I'm going to buy all of this and become a cake maker." And then I looked at it and I was like, "Yeah, no. We're going to go
you're
home.
like
We're not going to do this."
go out. Yes, definitely agree. That place is dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Yes. So now with writing, I guess 14 books, more than you have out because you're going to be putting them
Yeah.
out. Do you have a moment that you recall, or is it not arrived yet, where you're like, I've made it in your journey?
Yeah, so I had it once, what I call like an I made it moment, or like a moment that just made me go like, whoa. It was I was doing a signing at Authors in the Bluegrass, and at one point, so the doors open and people were starting to come, and I was kind of in the middle, and then at one point I realized like we're getting kind of busier, but I was just again focused on like talking and like trying to pay attention to the person that I was talking to, and I like looked up and there was like a line of maybe 35 people waiting, and I was like, and, and my assistant Nicole literally like taps me and is like, keep going. And I was like, cause like, it was a moment where I felt like I was going to start crying. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
just out of like, oh my God, people are like waiting to talk to me. That is so cool. Like, that is so sweet and kind. And I can't believe you're waiting. And like, why do you even want to talk to me? I was like, but
Yeah.
that felt like a very like profound.
Awesome. So do you have any signings or events you're going to be at coming up?
So I just finished for this year. I finished my last event. And so next year I don't start until June, and I'll be at Pack the Readers in Wisconsin. Yeah.
I'm trying to get to one of those events. I have to do a lot of coordinating. I have 2 kids on the spectrum, so to like go do those kind of things,
Yeah.
it's hard. But I'm like, I really want to do it because I want to go be. I mean, I'm on Instagram with all of you guys,
Yeah.
but it's different when you're in the same room.
It is.
Like it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is very cool. Congratulations
Thank you.
about that.
Thank
That's definitely, you deserve it.
Thank
So just soak it all in for sure. So for plans for future books, what can we see from you coming up?
So Be Dad is Maddie and Walsh's book. Between Dusk and Dawn, that comes out February 3rd. It's up for pre-order. So it's definitely still like the dark romance. It's hate to love. There's forced marriage. And then I can say there's like a saddle, but like maybe not like a yeehaw kind of saddle. That's all I'm gonna say. And then, so you asked me the question earlier, and you had said like how do you help your mental health? So I also, after I finished writing Be Dad, I started writing a hockey series, and then a book into that, I was really sad. I was like so sad of writing sad books, and so I was like, you know what? I don't have no pressure to put out a book. I'm releasing into the darkness, into the light, right? And so I wrote this cringy novella last month, and it is wild. And I was not going to publish it. Like, I was like, this is gross. Like, I'm not going to publish. This is like so cringy. It like hurts me. Right. And it's like funny and like not me at all. And then a couple of my street team members read it, and they were like, if you do not publish this, we will be mad at you. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just do it. And so on December 30th, I'm publishing a very cringy, unfiltered, unhinged little novella. It's like 80 pages. This isn't like I'm not gonna get banned. I can say like, okay. I was like,
yeah, I always mark them as for adults anyway, because I'm like, I don't need kids watching my interviews. So you're fine.
So it's the tropes are like workplace romance. It's about a lady who is tired of, who's never baked before, but she's tired of she's tired of big wieners in the big city, so she moves down to a small town hoping to open up her own bakery, even though she's never baked, and she's hoping to find a man with a wee wiener. And so in comes Willie, the technician for her Wi-Fi, and they get together and they realize they have a lot more in common than they thought. And all I will say is that milk and cookies go very well together. And it's intentionally weird and cringy. I'm going to build on this world because I realized like I need to write these funny books in between some heavier stuff. So there, that's what I'm
excited to read it. And I love that. I love small town. Like, I don't know. I love that. And I'm very excited about your secret baby book whenever that comes out, because that's like one of my favorite.
Yeah. And so after Be Dad, everyone's like, what's next? So I am writing a hockey series. It'll start coming out in April. The first one's called Your Pucking Mom. So it's hockey. It's not dark romance, but it is like I said, mental health heavy. So there's like heavy topics within the series. And it's looking to be maybe a 5 or 6 book series. Yeah.
I love hockey ones. Yeah. I didn't. Okay. So I don't like hockey, like watching hockey, like at all. But then I started reading it, and I'm like, I kind of like this hockey stuff. So I love those.
I like going to hockey games. I've started to realize. So I moved from California. I moved to Illinois. And so what do you do out here in the winter? You go to hockey games, I guess. Yeah. And so I went to so many hockey games. I was like, the adrenaline. I was like, give it to me.
Well, maybe it'd be different seeing it in person. So I'm from Arizona, and I came to California. Yeah. So I have not seen a game in person, but maybe it'd be different. But I love reading
about it in person. Yeah. Because it's a lot like you're reading. Like there's fights, and you're like, oh, yeah.
Okay, then I need to go check one out for sure, because I love reading about it. It's so like addictive. I love reading that. So what part of California did you live in?
I lived about an hour outside of San Diego in the like Temecula Valley area.
That's where I live.
No way!
So crazy. So what did work move you that way?
So I'm from Illinois,
Uh-huh.
and I met my husband because he was military on Pendleton, and then they moved him to 29 Palms, and my business was in Temecula, so I stayed there, and then he got out, and we couldn't. It just was too hard for me at that point, right? I just needed to be by my family. I needed their support with my kids, and I knew I was starting this writing journey, and I was like, I can't do it. And so that's what made us move out here.
What branch of the military?
He was a Marine.
Marines, yeah. My husband's Navy. We are from Arizona, and he was stationed here. So that's how I got out here. I never wanted to move to California, but he re-enlisted, and then I had to come. So, but yeah, it's definitely a process, and being away from your family is hard for sure.
Well, and I'm not like a heat person. I don't know how you Arizona people do it. Like, I hated the summers out there. I hate it. Like, they're so hot.
Yeah, I'm used to like the burn your face off weather, obviously from Arizona, and it's starting to get like that here. And I'm like, I love the warmth. I love being warm, but I don't want to be melty.
Yeah.
So it's getting like that. So it's not so much fun. So my last question for you is, what message do you want readers to take away after reading your books?
Well, particularly about the Isles series, I wrote the author's note at the end, actually recently, right before I published it. And what struck me was like, no matter the conversation, like big or small, like I think it is so important to recognize that in particular, this concept of like mental health for men is so important. And I just like hope, or my hope is that it sparks a conversation, like I said, even a small conversation amongst friends or whoever, right? That like normalize people speaking about mental health. Because I think for me, that's all I've ever wanted, was for people to talk about these silent diseases and these silent illnesses that affect so many people in our whole world, right? And that if you are experiencing something similar, you are also so worthy of being loved by someone who values you and cherishes you and kisses the ground you walk on, right? And I think that a lot of the time, a lot of people who suffer from depression particularly, we just don't see ourselves as like value or like worthy of that kind of love. And so for me, when I wrote the author's note, it was so important to make sure that like people saw themselves of being worthy, no matter what has happened to them in their lives, no matter their traumas.
Yeah. That's a great message. Yeah. That's definitely, I loved the ending of that. And that's cool that you expanded on that a little bit more. Yeah. I just loved the books. They were so good.
Thank you.
They were wonderful. So if you haven't read the series, I'm sorry we spoiled some things, but definitely go read it because it's really worth it. And it's amazing, and I'm really excited to read the other books and the hockey one coming out. And definitely, if you have a book bestie that you think would like this, please forward it along and like and subscribe. I put all of her information below on where to find her Instagram, so you can also follow her to get latest news on what she's coming out with. And definitely join me next time as we get another look behind the book. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.